Morning. We'll begin our commission meeting for this, the 13th of February, 2018 at 10 a.m. Our invocation this morning is by invitation, and we'll ask Ron Gibson to come forward to do that. Invitation.
Dear Father in heaven, we're extremely grateful for the opportunity that we have to be here together today under such favorable circumstances. We're grateful for the beautiful weather that we've been blessed with this winter, and would ask that Thou would bless us with moisture, that we might be able to have necessary water to take care of our families and our farms and our communities. We're grateful for opportunity we have to be here in this great commission meeting, and grateful for the commissioners that are here that give their time and service in the benefit of all of us as residents of our county and our community. Please help us that we'll all be able to do and say the things today that we intended to, and help to further this great process forward that we have in this great country. We're very grateful again for every blessing that Thou hast given us, and we say these things humbly in the sacred name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Miss Wilson?
Everybody please join me by standing and saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson and Ms. Wilson, for your participation today. Our thought today is, I've got two thoughts, one by Alex Morit, and the next one is by Ted Koppel. Alex wrote, "Whoever perceives that robots and artificial intelligence are merely here to serve humanity, think again. With virtual domestic assistants and driverless cars, just the latest in a growing list of applications, it is we humans who risk becoming dumbed down and ultimately subservient to machines." And as I thought about that, I thought, it doesn't matter what environment or what part of the county I go to, most are with a cell phone or looking at a screen in some form or fashion at some point of the day. My wife and I have a distinct difference. If we ever go to a restaurant, I like going in and having a face-to-face instead of going through the drive-through, because I don't like talking to a machine. And while some convenience, I love the interaction between people. Which brings me to Ted Koppel's quote. "Aspire to decency. Practice civility toward one another. Admire and emulate ethical behavior wherever you find it. Apply a rigid standard of morality to your lives, and if, periodically, you fail, as you surely will, adjust your lives, not your standards." So that's our thought today. I respect the fact that there will always be opportunity to grow as we learn from others. And so with that, we'll move on. We have three presentations today. I'm looking forward to all three. The first one is a presentation of the opening ceremonies of Weber County Olympics. Commissioner Ebert.
So Sarah, would you come on up, please, today? You can bring a team if you want. We're in the middle. We just started the Winter Olympics, and it's been kind of exciting to watch. We've already had some amazing stories that we've seen from South Korea. And so we thought as a county and as a little community that we'd have our own Olympics. And so Sarah has so kindly put it together. Would you talk briefly about our opening ceremonies? And we'd like to note that our elections department has actually created their own little flag as all are supposed to be at this time.
Yes.
Sarah.
So everyone will create their own country. Human Resources will be Compensation Nation. And Candace, would you like to tell us what elections is here? You're going to need to talk at the microphone. Say your name.
Candace Warren. We are Election Stand, and this is our flag. We're hashtag We Won in Weber.
We will hold events, which you'll hopefully read the schedule here throughout the week, and then have a medal ceremony next Friday. And there will be amazing medals and gifts for those who win. Hashtag Winning in Weber.
So the commission office, Michelle, what country are we again?
You kind of have to see it to say it. It's the Republic of, what can I help you with? It's spelled out all squished together one word.
So it's an opportunity for our employees to really get some team building, really enjoy the atmosphere, and really create a culture of teamwork and service. And I hope that everyone will be working towards, again, creating that, growing that, and really embracing a culture of service that we want to really have here in Weber County. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You read our schedule?
Oh, okay. Sorry. So Wednesday on the 14th, we have to submit our country flag, and we'll start our daily participation list. On Thursday the 15th is figure skating. That will be interesting. Friday the 16th is ski jumping. The 20th, Tuesday, is snowboard cross. Wednesday the 21st will be bobsledding. And Thursday the 22nd will be freestyle skiing. And I'm pretty sure most of this will end up somewhere on the internet, probably YouTube or Facebook. And we're extremely excited. The events will be held at the Innovation Room at 10 o'clock. See you there.
That's a great way to involve the employees. Thank you. Mr. Barrett, our next presentation will be by the Weber County Farm Bureau on the economic impact of agriculture in Weber County. As I understand it, Mr. Barrett, you are the head president, the head president of Weber County.
I'm currently the president of the Farm Bureau in Weber County. Appreciate that honor. And good morning, commissioners. I think you all know me, and we appreciate the support that you've given us in the past, and you've attended our meetings and things. I have Darren Westergaard, the vice president, with me today, and Ron Gibson, who we all know is the state Farm Bureau president. It'd be appropriate for him to have just a few remarks after I finish, and we'll close with a little video presentation. I think will be a little bit emotional to help tell our story. We have 408 students in high school in the Future Farmers of America program, and we're going to begin by kind of set the stage today by having Corianne Gibson present the FFA Creed. Corianne?
I am Corianne Gibson from the Fremont FFA chapter, and I will be presenting the FFA Creed by Ian Tiffany. I believe in the future of agriculture, with a faith born not of words, but of deeds, achievements won by the present and past generations of agriculturists, in the promise of better days through better ways, even as the better things that we now enjoy have come to us from the struggles of former years. I believe that to live and work on a good farm or to be engaged in other agricultural pursuits is pleasant as well as challenging. For I know the joys and discomforts of agricultural life and hold an inborn fondness for those associations which, even in hours of discouragement, I cannot deny. I believe in leadership from ourselves and respect from others. I believe in my own ability to work efficiently and think clearly with such knowledge and skill as I can secure, and in the ability of progressive agriculturists to serve our own and the public interest in producing and marketing the product of our toil. I believe in less dependence on begging and more power in bargaining. In the life abundant and enough honest wealth to help make it so for others as well as myself. Less need for charity and more of it when needed. And being happy myself and playing square with those whose happiness depends upon me. I believe that American agriculture can and will hold true to the best traditions of our national life, and that I can exert an influence in my home and community, which will stand solid for my part in that inspiring task. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey Ann. You can see that these young people are very passionate about what they're doing, involved in FFA, and it gives them great opportunities for leadership and growth. There's been a lot of negativity focused toward agriculture in our country. It comes from government regulations, from activists, animal activists, food and health activists. And our concern, I guess, in that regard is that farmers represent less than 2% of the occupations in the United States, and we have a major role in feeding the people of the country and the world. And the percent of the world is estimated to be 9 billion in 2050, and that's going to be a major task. Those are issues that we're not going to really talk about today, but it just kind of gives a background of where we are and some of the things that we spend our time dealing with. Today we're here just to address the perception and comments of some that agriculture is dead in Weber County and there isn't much need to worry about protecting farming. We want to tell our story and not be confrontational at all. And so to do that, it's probably best to get some common ground to start with. And we recognize that there are acres of agricultural land that are going out of production and going into homes. That's just, we accept that. That's a way of life. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to attend high school graduations, and I'd look out over that crowd of at least 500 kids in each high school, and I would think in a few years after college and training and missions and marriage and so forth, a high percentage of those young people want homes here in Weber County. And as parents and grandparents, we want them here. We expect that they will be here. So we know that something has to give, but we believe that if we work together and do things right, that we can continue agriculture in a very profitable way, as well as treat the growth. And it's interesting, I think about the demand for agricultural products in our target market. For every one of those homes that goes in, everyone there has to eat. So our demand and the need for the things that we grow just increases. A quote that I have used before, but I heard it a few years ago and I really liked, is that there will be days in everyone's life when they need a doctor, when they need a financial advisor, accountant, maybe a dentist, all the other professions, but 3 times every day, everyone needs a farmer.
It's only 3. He tries to make 5 or 6.
And it's probably more when you consider the fiber. We don't grow much cotton around here, but there are a lot of sheep in Utah, and we kind of forget about the fiber, the clothes that we all wear. But it's just interesting to note that the farmer makes it so all these other professions can go about what they do every day and not have to worry about where the food's going to come from for their family that day. And just in my lifetime, I'm old enough to see that that's really changed. I grew up out in Taylor, and when I was young, nearly everyone had at least 1 cow to provide milk for the family. We were raising a beef or 2 for food, and everyone had a big garden and chickens for eggs and probably a hog to kill. And that's all changed. And we owe it to the farmers that made it possible for everyone else to just go about doing the things that they do well and not have to worry about that. Well, so ag is not dead in Weber County. I've got just a few examples, and I don't want to overload you with a lot of things. A lot of my examples are just from members of the Farm Bureau Board. First of all, let me tell you about Mel and Matt Peterson. I'm related to them. My grandfather and Mel's grandfather were brothers, and they were their main cash crop was watermelons, and this was more than years ago. Things have changed a lot. Well, in Mel's family, they've continued to that tradition of growing produce, melons, and so Matt is the fourth generation there. Last year, they produced 3 million pounds of produce, and to realize how much that is, it's one semi-load of watermelons per day, and that's not just a flatbed with some sides on it. That's a van loaded with the big bins clear to the top. Pumpkins, during the peak time of their pumpkin harvest, they topped out at 5 semi-loads a day, and they averaged 2 to 3 semi-loads a day. And a significant thing is that 1 load per day was shipped to California. Mel had been telling me for many years, he's been in the business for 50, so he has a lot of contacts, growers and buyers, and he's been telling me for years that the California people said the day will come when they won't be able to provide all the produce for the country, and places like here, where we have the capability to grow our own, we're going to need to be able to do that. And so not only is that day come when they don't provide everything that we need, but we're actually shipping a semi-load of pumpkins from 1 farmer per day to California. Matt has done some very innovative things. He's got a drip irrigation system going over a lot of land that hasn't been used for farming in my lifetime. It's just sand hills. Melons grow very well on sand soil. To run water down a furrow in sand takes a lot of water and a lot of time. Now they have a drip irrigation system with a little tube underneath the rest of the plant. It's all controlled. The water's controlled and pumped to these areas, so they raised excellent crops of cantaloupe and watermelon on sandhills last year. They're expanding every year, and they're doing an excellent job, and they want to keep doing it. McFarland Farms in West Weber. Kenny and Jamila McFarland are board members, and they produce food on 225 acres. Last year, they did 1 million pounds of sweet corn, 2 million pounds of onions, 2.5 million pounds of pumpkins, and 500,000 pounds of squash. They have 6 stands, fruit stands, or produce stands in Weber County and Cache County, and they service all of the major grocery stores in the county with the exception of Walmart. One other thing that probably nobody would really know too much about is the Barker Fish Ponds or farms in North Ogden. They sold 20,000 pounds of fish last year, and between 1 million and 2 million fish eggs that they sold to hatcheries. So President Gibson would be a much better spokesman to explain the volume of dairy products, which I think is really much more than anyone would understand here in the county. And he will do that. And a large amount of the hay and the corn and the grain that's raised to feed the animals and the beef animals in the county is, of course, raised in Weber County. I won't give you a lot of statistics on that. Anybody that was really interested could go to a website, Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, and get a lot of those statistics that relate just to Weber County. Well, we appreciate the opportunity today to give our message, and we hope that the messages can be somewhat beneficial and appreciated by many. Our goal in the county is to promote agriculture, and we have a lot of activities to do that. We have a banquet on the 21st of April, and you're all invited, and we will send you an invitation with some details on that. We have a day that we call the Farm Fest, the last Saturday before the 24th of July, where we come into Ogden at the park over here by the municipal building. We bring animals and equipment and booths and kind of explain the things that we're doing here in the county. We have a mechanical cow that we take that will be there and goes to a lot of schools, and thousands of school-age kids now have milked that cow. So you get an understanding of where the milk really comes from and how it is to milk a cow. And we try to sell our message on agriculture, and I know President Gibson arranged for us to meet with our state or our legislators, our congressmen and senators back in Washington last year, and they said, send us examples of family examples or pictures. Those are things that really help tell the story. I want to take a lot of time with the family story, but just one to show how important it is just sometimes to convert one person at a time to agriculture in the county. I have a daughter that lives in Southern California, and she was visiting here a year ago at Christmas time, and she was telling her husband a little bit about involvement in the Farm Bureau, and he said, I've never been to a dairy. I'd really like to go to a dairy. So I called Darren and called Ron, and we were able to go over to Gibson Dairy and have a little family tour. Very impressive. And Ron explained that the milk from Gibson's went to make cheese. That's a lot of milk and a lot of cheese. And so your chances of eating cheese from here in Weber County, no matter where it was in the country, would be pretty good. And he explained that there was one fast food restaurant that they had sole source supply rights for the restaurant. So happened that particular restaurant is the closest one to my daughter's place down in Carlsbad, California. They eat there quite a bit. And ever since that was explained, my daughter, every time she goes there, can think that part of the meal that we're eating here in Southern California, quarter of a mile away from the beach, the palm trees and everything are there, totally different setting, but part of my meal came from Weber County, back just a few miles where my folks live, and within just visual distance of where she went K to 6th grade in West Weber Elementary. So just kind of an interesting thing how we would have no idea, I think, that the impact that Weber County agriculture might have in areas other than just Weber County. Well, we are committed to hard work and to fight for the opportunity to do what we are very passionate about and expect to be able to continue. There are 3,000 members of the Farm Bureau here in Weber County. They're not all farmers, of course, but we have the capability to communicate with them. And when you match us up with the Dairy Council, the beef and the pork producers and others who are involved in agriculture, we carry a pretty good weight. And we will, of course, by necessity, have to look for political candidates who understand what our needs are, and those are the people that we'll want to support and vote for. So, again, I really appreciate your time today, and now we'll turn the time to the President.
He's the president. My name's Ron Gibson, and I think 3 of you know me pretty well. I just think it's actually a great honor to be here today and to talk to you. And, you know, we've had a discussion, I and all 3 of you, about what we can do. And, you know, you saw Corianne get emotional there. And, you know, as she was doing that, I started to get emotional back there. Because as that FFA creed starts, it starts with, I believe in the future of agriculture. And it's hard. Nobody understands more than I do how hard it is to stay in this business. But we have a unique opportunity in Weber County that the counties south of us have messed up, in my opinion. And we have an opportunity to work together and create and maintain a culture here that we so desperately need. People in our county and in our communities are starving today, not for food, but for that connection to the culture that produces the food. That's why the farmers markets are successful. That's why people want to find ways to, you know, buy local, they want to know how their food's grown. All this is so important. And the main point that I want to make today is we will not succeed in Weber County if we don't find innovative ways to ensure that agriculture can stay here in business. I am very concerned with our dairy operation. I'm concerned that as the development moves in around me, soon, you know, the smells and the flies that are produced by my 149th year operation produce. We have been here 149 years on the same farm. And, you know, I was talking to one of my good friends just yesterday, and I said to him, there's nothing that would make me want to leave. I don't care how much an acre the land's worth. There's nothing that would make me want to leave as long as I can sustainably stay here. And that means as long as we can pay our bills and be in business. And I don't care what the land's worth. It's not for sale. And that's what you find in farmers. The reason that we have agriculture leaving our state and leaving our communities is because the economic pressures and the development pressures that come around us in the Wasatch Front put a chokehold on what they can do. So we just would like to offer our help as a Farm Bureau to that debate. You know, and I know that there's a lot of concerns in the county and there's a lot of things that you have to deal with, but this is one that if we let it go, we'll never get a chance to have it back, ever. Not in our generation and not in any future generation. And so that's why I think it's so important that we work so hard together to maintain that. I was so impressed a year ago as you came out as a commission with your four-legged stool. Very impressed to see agriculture as one of those legs. I believe that it is. You know, the economic value that Alan talked about, you know, I hate to get too much into that, but an economic value for Weber County agriculture, we estimated about $350 million in our communities. Even in our state, we're a $17 billion industry with 14% of the gross domestic product produced in the state of Utah as agriculture. So we are an industry that's important, but the most important part of that, money can be replaced, but the most important part of that is the cultural value that agriculture brings to our counties. I cannot imagine what Western Weber County would be like without agriculture today. And so when you look at some of our communities that continue to develop in acre lot systems, it is a total waste of resource. And it's a total waste of an opportunity for us to find a way to actually preserve agriculture in our community. And I know that that's a different concept, but it is the truth. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to let me address you. And this is a really cool video that we're going to watch. There's only one problem with it, is it has Dodge trucks in it. So we do not endorse Dodge trucks at the Farm Bureau.
Chevy.
Thank you very much.
I endorse.
Look at that.
harvest out hay, wire feed, stacks, and shoe scraps. Who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon and then pain in from tractor back. Put in another 72 hours, so God made a farmer. God had to have somebody willing to ride the routes at double speed to get the hay in ahead of the rain clouds and yet stop in midfield and brace to help when he sees the first smoke from a neighbor's place. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to eat lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink cone woods, who will stop his mower for an hour to split the broken leg of a meadow lark. So God made a farmer. It had to be somebody who plowed deep and straight and not cut corners, somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk and replenish the self-feeder and finish a hard week's work with a 5-mile drive to church. Somebody who would bring the family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer.
Terrific. Alan, I believe you had a mention in your presentation. Commissioner Gibson, you had a couple of things to comment on there.
I did.
I thought you did.
Wanted to comment on?
You had something to comment on. Did I misunderstand?
You meant this, Mr. Gibson.
I think you
Oh.
had that one.
President Gibson, not
And President, yeah.
Very good. Commissioners, that's awesome. Commissioners' comments.
I would just like to say that I have a special place in my heart for people who provide tremendous service. And whether it's our military or our police, whether it's teachers or nurses, or whether it's farmers, those who give so much of their life for something they believe in. I hope that the agricultural community feels support from the Commission. I would be concerned if you feel that there isn't support from the Commission. I've ridden around in the Chevy truck and saw farms and saw struggles and the toil that it takes, and talked about what we can do from a commission perspective, from a county perspective, to help strengthen our agricultural stakeholders in this community. And I would not accept anything from this commission other than that moving forward. I agree that there is an economic development component to it, but I think Ron really hit on one of the amazing true values of agricultural is the heritage and how it strengthens our community and what it teaches our youth about giving to others. And so I believe you will continue to have a very strong commitment from this commission to hear the needs, to provide the avenues to preserve our agricultural heritage. And if you don't feel that, please reach out to us and let's have some conversations. Amazing job. Thank you, Alan, for your presentation. Ron, again, your words pull at heartstrings as usual, and amazing. Corianne Gibson, who is just, I want to pull her up. And I hate to say this, but I think she's the cutest Gibson girl because she's so amazing. So thank you again for your time. No offense to any of the other Gibson daughters who are beautiful also.
I didn't want to mention Corianne because she is my daughter, but I think I will do it in this way and say how proud I am of her. It's interesting. She came home one day and said, "Dad, if I memorize the FFA Creed, the first one in my class to memorize it gets their jacket, their FFA jacket." and she's a ninth grader, so it's the first year she could get her jacket. And they're not cheap, you know. Those FFA jackets are a prize. And the next morning, she woke up and went to her class and recited the FFA Creed, which again, that's like, gosh, it's a 5-minute resuscitation. That I thought that was pretty good, pretty smart for a ninth grader, and got her jacket. So she's excited about that. But the thing that has been special to me to watch her prepare for the Creed speaking contest was having her walk around the house, talking about the Creed and reciting the Creed, and realizing just how much she truly believed it. And I think that's the part that got me in it. Just so you know, it's my fault because I started to tear up. She's got her dad's genes, and then she was done. And anyway, I apologize to Corianne for putting her in that position. But and it has been great to have her feel just how deeply those things that she said mean to her. And I can promise you, those were not idle words on her part. Those were words that she believes in and cares about and knows to be true. And that's what makes it special to me. And so as I extrapolate that to the rest of our community, and I see all these wonderful kids, I'm grateful that Jan's here from the fair. I see all of those kids dragging a lamb or a hog or a steer that weighs 10 times their body weight, or 20 times in some cases their body weight that they've trained and cared for and loved and put hands on, and I see what it does to these kids 20 times. If nothing else, boy, that FFA organization is a tremendous youth organization, isn't it? Something that just absolutely creates tremendous and powerful men and women who are able and willing to do important things. So anyway, I'm grateful for an organization like Farm Bureau who cares enough about this important industry to stand up and educate those around us who may not understand quite as much as we would like to. So just by way of interest, FFA is not just a Fremont thing. It's not just a West Weber thing or a Taylor thing. There are now 4 high schools in Weber County who have FFA programs, including a lot of them in the city. You wouldn't think that there's a whole bunch of farm kids at Bonneville High, but I'm telling you, Bonneville High's FFA chapter is thriving and doing extremely well. And Weber School District has recently, under the direction of Mr. Marriott, has recently built a facility out in Taylor where people who don't have a place to raise an animal for the 4-H programs can go out and raise their animals. They go every single day and take care of them and watch over them and all the stuff that's required, just not in the backyard because of zoning or other requirements. So this is truly something that affects agriculture as a whole. So I want to specifically thank Wilson for her effort with the FFA program and at the Weber County Fair. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your presentation today, Mr. Barrett, Mr. Gibson, and Corianne. I appreciate your memorization that didn't come just from your head. You know, a decade before moving to a job out west, I learned what it was like to work in the city. It was wonderful. There's gratefully a whole different culture that exists west of 1900, or Wall. We are privileged to have different cultures within our county. None is better than the other. They're just different. It's grateful. I'm grateful in my life to have learned these different cultures, and I appreciate the patience of many that have taught me. Thank you. If there's nothing else on item number 2, Mr. Cooper will have an RDA presentation by Ogden City. Holland, if you'd come up and maybe do a little introduction.
Thank you so much for having us today. I am really excited to have the Deputy Director of Ogden City's Economic and Community Development. And what's also awesome to have in the audience is Mayor Mike Caldwell, Mark Johnson, and the Director of Ogden City's Economic and Community Development, Tom Christopoulos. So I am so excited to have Mr. Cooper here today. I think that coming off of a great discussion from agriculture and the amazing opportunities we have there, and letting Mr. Cooper have an opportunity to talk about our development within the cities and our opportunity for growth, both commercial and residential, really shows, excuse me, really shows all the diversity that Weber County has to offer. This is also coming on the heels of an incredible presentation by EC Utah, which showed some of our business intel and the information that they've been able to provide us personally. So you can see through Weber County as an umbrella and as our efforts to move forward with a data-driven economic development and community development plan, we're partnering and collaborating with so many entities, and our relationship with Ogden City is fantastic as we grow and work together. Our relationship with the state, same. It's fantastic as we grow and work together. So it's really exciting to see the support from Ogden City as well as this great presentation from Mr. Brain Cooper.
Commissioners, good morning. I appreciate that introduction. I appreciate Mayor Caldwell and Mark and Tom's presence here too. I think that is evidence of the importance of the discussion that we hope to have today and going. It's been a while since I've been here, a couple of years, so I appreciate you having me back. My purpose today is to do a couple of things. One, to speak about RDAs in general terms. There's a lot of good work that the Redevelopment Agency of Ogden City is doing, and so I'd like to just brief you on that. We're coming just off the heels of our fiscal year 17 annual report, so some of this information is brand new and related to that report. And then secondly, I'd like to talk specifically about our newest redevelopment area, which is the Adams Community Reinvestment Area. So those are the two topics that we'll be covering. First, just a brief introduction to the new language that the law is using now to define redevelopment areas. No longer are they called RDAs or even URAs specifically. They're community reinvestment areas. And as we have looked to change that language, we've also changed what those areas do. So right now the law is descriptive when it comes to what can be eligible in a CRA. We've blended economic development areas, urban areas, which were really blight designation areas, and also community areas into one area, which really all things are possible now. So these are catalysts for community development. They do not require a finding of blight, as was once the statute. There is a secondary term in the law that allows for a finding of blight. I won't get into that now. In general, the approach that we would be taking moving forward would be using the community reinvestment areas without the finding of blight. Again, no eminent domain associated without the finding of blight, so there wouldn't be any of those factors to consider under the new CRA designation. And another change, a significant change, is the use of the taxing entity committee. Previously, the committee would convene and vote as a body. Now, under CRA rules, the participation from the taxing entities are done via interlocal agreement, and that'll be important as we move forward in the presentation. Right now, as of our 2017 fiscal year 2017 annual report, the Redevelopment Agency is managing 20 RDAs, and you can see the breakup there. As the law has changed over time, you can see that we do have some remnant areas as they are created under the law of that time, then they persist in that manner. So we do have an urban renewal area. We have 13 old redevelopment areas, we have 5 economic development areas, and we have 1 community development area. Currently, because this report was completed in July of 17, if you took a current snapshot, we would actually add 1 CRA, which is the Adams CRA adopted January 9th of this year. This is a combination of all the data that goes with those areas. This is a summation of our 45 or 50-page annual report. I know it's difficult to read, so I've left a hard copy there with you. What this is telling you is the base year of each individual district, the year in which it was created, the valuation of that year, also the valuation of the current year, which at the time of this report, it was 2015 on some cases and 2016 on others. It shows you what the valuation of the area is in that year. It also shows the percentage of annual average growth, which I think is an important consideration to make. We convened a study in 2015 to look at all properties in Weber County that were associated within a redevelopment area and all properties within Weber County that were associated outside of a redevelopment area. And we compared their annual average growth in terms of their valuation depicted through property tax. And it was shown that properties within a redevelopment area within Weber County grew value-wise 3 times faster than those that are without. And I think in the spreadsheet, it's really indicative of that. BDO was an area that was established in 1998. Obviously, it was a government facility, so the base value of that year was 0 to little. I think 22,000, right? So you can see it's worth over, right now it's worth $400 million. And so that's a great example of how to use the tool of a redevelopment agency to take something from its non-productive state and put it into a productive state and grow the value of that property from a property tax standpoint much faster than it ever would have without such a tool.
What was over how much time was that one?
1998 to now.
So yeah, 20 years.
Yep. And that district expires in 2019. And if you'll see at the very last column there, it shows what is anticipated to the taxing entities in terms of that increased value based on 2017 tax rates. Obviously, tax rates change year to year. But if we were to do that today, based on 2015's valuation and 2017's tax rate, those are the numbers that each taxing entity would receive to its general fund basis. So these are significant things that we're doing. We do manage quite a few older districts. You can see some of those have been established in the 70s, a lot of them in the 80s, just a few in the recent years. And we've changed, as the law has changed, we have changed our approach as to how we employ this tool, over which parts of the city that we use them, and what projects are candidates for the use of RDAs and the tax increment finance that comes with that. So that's just a brief snapshot. I'd be happy to explore that spreadsheet with you privately or here if you'd like to ask any questions as we move forward. But there's a lot of information there that helps us to understand how productive our project areas are, and I think they're very productive. So RDAs are, the redevelopment agency and the creation of the districts are an economic development tool. It's one of many, but it is an impactful and powerful one. And so we try to look at it as a tool. It's not the end-all be-all, but it is a very effective way to bring about positive change in the community. Positive change that doesn't necessarily happen on its own. It's meant to be a catalyst. It's meant to be a force multiplier, so to speak. And so we try to tie that tool to initiatives and strategies. And one of the strategies that was adopted jointly by the Ogden City Council and the administration was the Quality Neighborhoods in 2015. The Quality Neighborhoods Initiative is an initiative to stabilize and revitalize Ogden's neighborhoods as neighborhoods of choice. And so there's a lot of strategies and there's a lot of objectives and intervention methods within that initiative, but the RDA, the use of the RDA as a tool is really connected to that mission of revitalizing and stabilizing Ogden's communities. As part of that initiative, we identified a number of components that make up a quality neighborhood. I won't go through all of these, but you can see that they're diverse and they're vast. And so these are the things that, as we look to implement a certain strategy or a certain tactic within a defined boundary or a neighborhood, these are the objectives that we seek to obtain. And these are the things that RDA, tax increment financing dollars, other creative financing methods, general fund dollars, services, all of these things go to affect these 6 principles or these 6 components of a quality neighborhood. As we look at the implementation of any new district, we have adopted a community outreach process that allows us to understand what the neighborhoods are thinking and feeling. And we've done that for the Adams CRA. This is a new process. We haven't done that for always. It was really implemented over the last couple of years as we learned some new things. Our community is becoming more engaged in public process. They're becoming more aware of their surroundings. They want to be involved. And so we're adapting our process as we learn these new things about the neighborhoods and the community. And so the outreach process that we employed for the Adams CRA was a number of open houses that we conducted. And through those open houses, we asked folks to look at a map of a certain area, in this case, the Adams CRA. I'll show you a map of what that looks like in a moment. And to identify bright spots and identify impediments, things that they liked, things that were working, things that contributed positively to their community and to their quality of life, and also those things that were broken. It could be a particular address, it could be a particular event. So we asked the community to tell us that they know best in terms of what their neighborhood looks like. So we conducted the first open house on January 25th of 17 for the Adams CRA. We received a number of folks in attendance. We received quite a few comments, and then we formulated that into a document that we then took back to that same group on March 9th to tell them what the collective information was. And from that, and that additional feedback on that second open house, we were able to construct a framework document that talked about what the public was seeing, the information that they gave us, and how to actually take some of those thoughts and ideas and concerns and put it into a strategic document. And so that was our community investment framework document that really precedes any work for an RDA. This is some of the numbers from that public input. We had about 40 people across both sessions, and from that we had 154 comments. Most of those comments were related to impediments. So I think it was pretty telling to us as an agency looking at those community members that they had a lot of concerns in their neighborhood. And from that comment, we established this boundary. This is the Adams Community Reinvestment Area boundary. This again was adopted on January 9th of 18, and it goes from 20th Street to 28th Street, roughly Washington Boulevard up to Jefferson, with a couple of variations as you go down those areas. The reason for this geographical boundary is important. First of all, the north-south limitations reflect the limitations of our central business district. Roughly. And also the east-west boundaries reflect that transition neighborhood between our central business district, which is the urban downtown, and what is more of a residential single-family home neighborhood, which is the east central. So this is an important geographical area as you connect those neighborhoods and as people try to relate to the urban downtown, but also to maintain some quality of life in the neighborhood. So we felt like it was important to identify this collectively. Commissioner Ebert.
Have you not included 24th to 20th along Washington because it's already in an RDA?
Correct. That's the East Washington URA.
Okay.
Established in 2009. Good observation. So these now create two contiguous RDAs with the East Washington URA, and really gives us a strong ability to affect change in this neighborhood. I think it's important, and we'll get to this in a minute, another reason why this area was selected is the vast amount of important buildings that exist in this area in terms of their historic nature, the architecture, their occupancy capacities, those types of things. So it was a strategic boundary, and again, this was adopted on the 9th of January. So as it relates to that specific project area plan, there is required to be a budget adopted with the plan. This is a summation of the budget. The base year valuation of that boundary that I just showed you. So if you looked at the property value of all of those properties within that geographical boundary in 2017, it was a $60 million valuation roughly. Based on the projects that we've identified in the plan, there could be an additional $123 million of new expenditures in that area. These are expenditures that aren't currently happening because market conditions at this time don't allow for it or don't promote it. So what this strategy entails is to infuse this area with additional dollars to help promote that investment that isn't being justified through current market conditions. And so from that, the added taxable valuation from that $123 million investment is anticipated to be $95 million over 25 years. In order to do that, in order to create a mechanism to catalyze this new investment, again, investment that's not happening at the pace that we would like to see or at all, we would need contributions from the taxing entities as the law allows. The city approved on January 9th an interlocal agreement with the RDA to contribute $2.5 million over 25 years to these projects. And the school district passed an interlocal agreement as well to contribute $5.7 million, almost double what the city has committed based on the tax rate. And today, this presentation is, again, for the purpose of seeking an interlocal agreement with the county for participation of $2.4 million towards this area. The way that we construct these plans and budgets is to establish a potential funding opportunity and then to cap that based on what we feel is necessary to catalyze that. So what that means is that based on the approved budget, the agency only has the ability to collect $10.8 million over the 25 years. And $7.9 million of that can be used for development incentives. That can go directly to property owners. It can go to new developers. It can go to new owners. It can be used by the agency via the city for infrastructure. There's all kinds of uses under the law for the tax increment, but it is capped at $7.9 million. The housing investment that could be used in this district or in other districts is $2.1 million, and that money is used for the construction of housing. It's used for infrastructure to support housing. It does have a low mod income target under the law, so we generally hit that as well. So that's actually moved over to a housing fund separate from the fund that is maintained by this area. And then $663,000 over the life of 25 years is captured for redevelopment agency costs in terms of paying staff and the administration of not only this district, but the agency itself. So those are hard fixed dollars in the budget and our caps. The way that that works out is, if you go back to this slide, those are maximum contributions of 2.5 from the city, 5.7 from the school district, and 2.4 from the county, potentially. These are caps within that 25 years, which means that if that contribution is made prior to the expiration of the 25th year, then that interlocal agreement that sets that up and allows for that is terminated. So it's really meant to drive economic development as quickly as we can to get those values growing as quickly as possible, and to make sure that investment is happening on a pace that doesn't exist without this kind of a mechanism. Some of the key projects that we've identified is obviously the Ben Lomond, the Bigelow Hotel. That's an amazing fixture in the community. It's been recently purchased by a new company, and they have been slowly putting in additional dollars to make it better, and they seek to do more. And right now, unfortunately, the market doesn't justify it, so they have spoke to us about potentially receiving some incentives to help that. The renovation of the what's called the Ben Lomond Garage, which is that facility just east of the Ben Lomond or the Bigelow Hotel. That was the original motor garage for the hotel. So as travelers came, they'd park the vehicle there, and the vehicle would get serviced. And so it's been a difficult proposition for previous owners in terms of what to do with it. Right now, it has an amazing plan being constructed. It's an art facility that allows for artists to come and work and to have a place to display their art. And there's going to be restaurants and cafes. So we're really excited to see that renovate. And then there's a number of other major projects that we've identified, as well as a lot that haven't been identified. As I mentioned, this area is really prime for some transitional housing, meaning that missing middle type of a housing, not a multifamily stacked flat apartment and not a single family home, but that missing middle smaller scale type of residential living. And so this is a perfect scenario for that, and we hope to see some of that happening as well. So these are things we've identified based on known and projected information, but there could be other information that comes forward over the period of the district. I won't go through all of these. These are development objectives that have been identified in the plan that we seek to perform over the life of the district. This is why we would want to conduct business like this. Obviously, getting a stronger tax base, removing blight, making sure that there's quality places to live, creating jobs, and enhancing the historic elements of this district, as well as the creation of a cultural and arts district, I think are some of the major objectives. Same thing with the design objectives. We have an amazing architectural inventory in the city in general and in this area specifically, so we want to make sure that historic elements of those buildings in this area are preserved, as well as the heritage of the neighborhood. And again, I think the greatest public benefit to these types of things is to accelerate that investment that isn't necessarily happening on its own due to whatever market conditions exist. I think we have a proven history of using tax increment dollars in ways that drive investment that's desirable. And so that's our major public benefit that we see here, as in all RDAs, just seeing some of those buildings that have sat vacant turn into productive uses, creating more jobs downtown, more living opportunities, and creating a vibrant quality of life. So the process is, again, set out by statute. Right now, we have completed the entire process that allows us to legally establish the Adams Community and Reinvestment Area. We have, again, successfully negotiated interlocal agreements between the redevelopment agency and the city, as well as the agency and the school district. So we are seeking interlocal agreement between the county and the city to get us to that maximum budget and allow us to go forward over the next 25 years and seek some of these new improvements in this area. So that is my presentation. I hope that didn't take too long. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
I don't really have any questions. I had some, it was a very informative presentation. In one of the slides, just a few slides back, I thought it was interesting to point out that there are some drainage issues in some of these areas. Mm-hmm. It just strikes me as one of those things that people don't think about. Obviously, they see the facade, they see things like that, but they don't realize the infrastructure that goes into that and how difficult some of those things may be. So obviously, that's an educational piece that people probably ought to see, is the things that go behind the scenes. But I had the opportunity several years ago to walk through that Bigelow garage, mm-hmm. and what a tremendous asset I think that is to our community. And I would dare guess that there are a lot of people who have never been in it, right? And right. And yet the history and frankly I think it's built well. Mm-hmm. From a structural perspective, it's just been neglected for a long time. But that just seems, this whole area seems like an area that is in desperate need some kind of a kickstart. And so I appreciate the willingness that you've had from the city, and I don't know that it was intentional. I know that they introduced everybody, but the great Mark Johnson, who happens to be here as well from the city. But I think it's been fun to watch. What's that?
I wonder if that's his pacemaker. I can see. Sure. Well, some say you don't have a heart, but I think there's proof.
It's been fun to watch the proactive way in which you've tackled some of these challenges, and I appreciate that. Thanks for bringing that.
Thank
to
you.
us.
Quick questions. Can you go back to your slide that talks about where the dollars broke up, the 7.9, the 2.1, and the average administrative costs? So I think one of the questions I have is, I know from kind of having some conversations that RDA or CRA dollars for housing becomes, the return sometimes is extremely small for them to recoup. And you're the experts here. I'm just wondering if that 7.9 on that 2.1 becomes so restrictive that if there's better uses for those dollars, maybe back into the overarching pool, but you can't use them because they have to go to housing. Did I hear that correctly?
Right, so there's a statutory requirement that a portion of the budget is funded for housing. It's 10% at a minimum. We use 20%. That was 10% is just a recent change. 20% is usually what we've done. And I think the need requires 20%. What you've alluded to is the economic deficit for housing redevelopment. What happens is, because the way residential units are taxed at a 55% rate, the costs are still quite extravagant in terms of taking blighted properties that no longer have a useful life and removing them, dealing with any soil issues, and then putting new residential housing back on. If you don't have a density component to that, and certainly density is something in the downtown area that we would drive almost always, but density isn't always appropriate. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times, especially in these neighborhoods and moving to the east, you have this deficit. Before you even begin, you have sometimes a 30% deficit to what it costs to redevelop housing versus what housing can be sold for. I think some of the examples that we have in real life are the subdivisions that the city is building. We use a tremendous amount of equity dollars from places like HUD and other places to go into the clearing of the land, the infrastructure, the road structure, and then we borrow debt to build the homes. And through the sale of that home, we recover that debt, but we never recover the cost of the land, the cost of the clearing of the land, and the cost of the roads. So there's a huge amount of gap there, which is why keeping it at 20%, I think, is important.
Okay. All right. But I think we can follow up at another time. I appreciate it. Great presentation, and I think it shows being proactive in your economic and community development really has long-term return on that investment. So thank you very much, and thank you, Ogden.
Thank you.
Yeah, just talk to us a little bit about the importance of population in this core. I noticed a lot of focus, I think, in this plan as well as neighboring areas on urban housing development. And talk to us about why that's important and how it makes sense.
Well, I think it's no secret that all the projections going forward call for a much higher population density across the entire Wasatch Front. So that begs the question, is our current land planning and development patterns going to be sufficient to manage that new population influx? So I think there's that component as we look at what's appropriate going forward. What is the current land use efficient? In a couple of cases along this corridor, we have 10-acre blocks that are primarily developed by parking lots. So I think that as we prepare for the population influx, we seek to...
Really? We're going to go into parking lots again. You're going to beat me up on parking lots?
I question myself, actually. But it's true. I mean, one peek at an aerial map and you see how inefficient the land use is in terms of that. So I think we seek to look at better ways to utilize our land, and then there's the existing population, right? People who currently live here and want to live here and seek better living conditions and looking for variety, right? Some folks don't want a single family home, while others do, and they don't want to live in an apartment. So I think having a wide variety of housing styles, which our neighborhoods are very good about, is important to deal with the existing population while seeking to implement best practices when it comes to land use to plan for the future. And then there's is important the demographic elements that come into that in terms of poverty and mobility, opportunity. That's why under Tom Christopoulos, in the city, the redevelopment falls under his direction, as well as community development, because economic development and community development really are tied together. And so all of these things are dealt with under one type of administrative function, and it works out really well.
Do you see any more need with the vertical taxation structure that currently, and I think successfully, has taken place, for instance, 23rd and Washington on that southwest corner? I don't remember the name of the project, but it's a nice piece there.
Mm-hmm.
So Adams Avenue RDA, is there any plan for that type of growth in that area?
So what you're referring to is the Tower View Apartments. That's a new structure that was partially funded by redevelopment dollars back in 2015, I believe, as part of the East Washington URA. That was a very appropriate use for that corner. Architectural style aside, I think the massing and the prominence that it gives to that corner as an anchor really works. Anything less than that would have been, a really poor use of the land. So there's not a lot of opportunity for that size of things in this neighborhood. The Wells Fargo building, the old First Security building, could easily be an apartment building with a little bit of work or partially residential. There's some opportunity maybe along Adams. We're trying to keep the larger facilities that are multifamily in the downtown area, and as we scale up the hill and get into the more single-family residential area, we would keep those to a minimum and certainly on a smaller scale. We wouldn't want to inundate that neighborhood with that type of a project, except for a couple of key areas that are more nodes than they are neighborhoods. 24th and Monroe being one of them, where the old Rite Aid site is, which is not part of this, but that's a good example of where you could create a node and bring density without hurting the residential neighborhood.
Thank you. That answers my question.
So I know I'm kind of asking a question I think we've talked about before, but I think it would be valuable when we look at future possibilities for transportation and development. Those nodes can actually be created. I think we've talked about the BRT route and what that would mean to the 25th Street. I think maybe at another time we will talk about the value of those nodes and how we can actually create them and the value that they bring through transportation corridor planning. So anyway, thank you.
Totally agree.
Any other questions, commissioners? Mayor Caldwell, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Christopoulos, any other quotes or things you'd like to make, statements?
Mayor, come on.
Thank you very much.
That was Mayor Caldwell. He was saying thank you, Commissioner Ebert, for having him come to the meeting today. Just teasing.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. We appreciate your investment in our county. Thank you. Nothing further on that presentation.
You don't have to leave all of a sudden.
They've got a world, a city to build.
We'll move on to our item F on the agenda, consent items, which item number one there is a request for approval of warrants number 1344 to 1345 and 425 488 to 425 458 in the amount of $2,970,272.35. Number two is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $319,928.05. Item three is a request for approval of minutes for the meeting held on February 6th, 2018. Item four is a request for approval of ACH payment to U.S. Bank in the amount of $186,351.29 for purchasing card transactions made through the billing cycle ending January 25th, 2018. Item five is a request for approval of new business licenses, and item six is a request from Weber County Tax Review Committee for approval to waive the 2013 delinquent tax of $71.07, along with a penalty of $10 and an interest of $22.75. Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Hatch, would you give us some detail on this, please?
Absolutely. This week we had issued 15 purchase orders for a total of $320,000. 69% of that amount, or $221,000, was for the library. That was primarily shelving for the North Branch, as well as some software and updates. 25%, or $81,000, was for IT, and that was for computer hardware and software. As far as checks written this week, we wrote 170 checks for $3 million. 71% of that amount, or $2.1 million, was actually transportation funds for the Skyline Parkway in Ogden, and then a small amount towards the 2550 South project. 12% was, or $358,000, was for the transfer station. That was disposal fees, and then 6%, or $176,000, was for the library office furniture and cubicles. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Commissioners, any other questions after that presentation? And I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent items as read.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Gibson, a seconded by Commissioner Ebert. No other questions, will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent items carry. Thank you. Item G, action items. Joe Olson, a request for Weber County Tax Review Committee for approval to refund $894.13 to David T. Shoup, parcel number 22101-0001, due to a county error. Mr. Olson.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here on behalf of the Tax Review Committee. Through the 2017 Board of Equalization, David Shoup's, owner of the property, identified as parcel 22101N1, identified that there was some factual error with the physical components of his property. We dealt with the valuation for the property 2017 through the Board of Equalization. Mr. Shoup made a request that we look at previous years, identify value based on the correct physical components, and of course his request was to refund the difference in tax. We met as a Tax Review Committee. We reviewed value on the property. We referenced Judicial Code 78B2307 that has been adopted by the Commission. It gives us the ability to analyze, review, and possibly request to use a refund for those 4 previous years. Based on that information, there was a tax identified to be refunded of $894.13. Mr. Shoup did in fact attend that Tax Review Committee meeting. There was discussion about information available to the public. All the information is public information, responsibility of property owners at that time. So the Tax Review Committee would make a recommendation to the Commission to refund Mr. Shoup an amount of $894.13. Mr. Shoup has made a request to address the Commission to talk about this situation through the Tax Review Committee. And we've also, Mr. Erickson is here with the County Attorney's Office. Cortland's been heavily involved in this process. And Mr. Uliberry, the Weber County Assessor, is here. He has been involved. And they are available for any questions you may have of them.
Great. Mr. Shoup, would you like to come forward? Would you just state your name and address again? I think we have it.
My name is David Shoup. I live in Utah.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
So there was an error, a county error, as listed in action item G. My complaint or request is the county made the error. It's cost me real dollars, and you guys are willing to refund $894.13 to me, but the true amount is much more than that. The error happened in 1998, if I'm not mistaken, and John Uliberry can attest to that. Basically, there's 3 things that I have a problem with. One is payment. You need to pay back what you took. If you took it inappropriately, you need to give it back. The second is the principal, or the potential, or the interest on that same money. Where you're willing to give me the money back, but where's the interest on that money? There's been no address to that part of the puzzle. And the third is the penalty. Where's Weber County's penalty in over-assessing me? So first thing, payment. I came up with a little parable, and I think it'll help illustrate my point. I'm a good guy. I've got two neighbors. One lives on either side of me, and they both want to borrow a shovel. And one neighbor borrows a shovel and takes my shovel, uses it, and comes to return it. I'm not home. Takes it back to his house, and it sits behind his cupboard in his garage for years. I forget about the shovel. He forgets about the shovel. He cleans up the garage. He finds my shovel. My initials are on it. He brings it back to me with a plate of cookies that his wife has baked. He cleaned up the dirt off the shovel and even bought me a pair of gloves. It says, "Dave, dang, I forgot your shovel. Here you go. Have your shovel back. And I made you some cookies, and here's a pair of gloves." That's one neighbor. The other neighbor on the other side of me, didn't even ask to borrow the shovel. I left it in my garden. The wind blew it over, and the handle fell on his side of the property. He picks it up, thinks it's his, takes it, uses it for years and years and years. Finally, I see my neighbor on the other side of the line. I go to talk to him, and I notice my initials on the shovel. And I say, "Hey, that's my shovel." He says, "Well, I'm not so sure. Why don't you come to a committee meeting? And why don't you fill out some paperwork and come and stand, and we'll talk about it." And so finally, we go through that process. He takes the shovel, breaks it in half, and gives me part of the shovel and says, "There you go," turns his back and walks away. My purpose in telling you this parable is I want you to look closely and say, what kind of neighbor is Weber County being to Dave Shoup? And then I want you to read on the wall behind you where it says public trust to conduct the affairs of county government in such a way as to nurture public confidence. Quite honestly, I lost my confidence. And I understand there's a statute that limits how much you can reimburse me to 4 years. And if that's the problem, then change the statute. Or if I'm the exception, if you overassess me and you're not overassessing everybody else, and I'm the exception to the rule, then make an exception to your 4-year statute of limitations. Pay me back what you owe me. That's stuff you learn in kindergarten. If you take something that doesn't belong to you, what do? Give it back. How come you give me back part of a shovel? That's the question I have. The county assessor has something that's written right on it's a little placard that sits up there. It says, "Our duty is set forth by statute requires the assessor to evaluate property, both real and personal, as its respective fair market value as a vehicle for the purpose of taxation. Our objective is to effectively complete our duties as fairly, accurately, and equitably as possible. Our priority to the taxpayer and the community must remain one of competent service and cooperation from staff and administration." That's their mission and objectives. It's printed right on their placard, right in their office. I guess I'm questioning John Ulibarri and his staff. Am I being treated fairly? That's my question to you. Am I being treated fairly? I would like an answer. James.
Well, I'd like to hear from the assessor's office and from legal, because I don't know exactly how the assessment happened, what your legal requirements are as a taxpayer to review, and so at this point I would like to hear the whole story before I answer your direct question.
Fair enough. And I assume that you're going to have Cortland come up and give you a legal perspective on this, but I think you already know the answer, what you should do. If I'm reading my Bible, and I'm kind of conflicted there, because in Exodus it says if someone's caught stealing, you got to repay double. That's what your Bible says. But there's another part of the Bible in the New Testament that talks about a man who had a creditor and a debtor, and the creditor came to him and says, "Hey, I need you to pay me back." And the debtor said, "Dude, I don't have the money, I can't." So he frankly forgave him the debt. And then that same guy went out to all his buddies that owed him money and said, "Hey, pay me." And so I'm conflicted. Which man am I? Am I the Exodus man that demands justice from the county, pay me back what you owe me? Or am I that other guy that would really rather be on the mercy side of the equation rather than the justice side of the equation? So, I think you owe me more than $894.13. You picked my pocket for 18 years, And you guys want to say it's my fault because I didn't double check you, because I didn't call you on the carpet sooner. What reason did I have to believe that my county was over-assessing me? I've been a scoutmaster for 12 years, and I teach those boys trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. First one there is trustworthy. I had trust in my government until I find out they've been ripping me off for 18 years.
I would just point out really quickly that stealing and theft is an intentional act.
How do I know it's not?
Well, I would just be careful when you throw out that this is an intentional act. I think we are understanding that accidents or mistakes are made, and I understand just the emotional feel that you have. But I would just be careful when your
Fair enough.
inference is that this is an intentional act. It's
Over-assessed. I'll try to use that from now on.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
So I came up with some solutions on what I think would work equitably for me and the county both. Oh, incidentally, I did get on your website this morning to look at a parcel search, and according to the information that I printed this morning, the data is still wrong. And my solutions, see if I can find those. Solution number one, pay back the difference, the amount overassessed from 1998 to the present, plus interest, plus penalties. We haven't talked much about the penalty part. I would probably direct my comments towards Commissioner Ebert, because he's a former policeman and would understand the importance of having penalties for errors. Another solution, prorate my taxes to account for the difference over the next 1 to 5 years to equal the amount that I've been overassessed. That includes that overassessment, interest, and penalties. Solution number 3, give Mr. and Mrs. Shoup a larger say in how our tax monies are spent. If I'm putting more into the kitty, shouldn't I have more say? Number 4, file a claim against the indemnity policy for the dollar amount specified. And that has to do with page 84 of the Utah State indemnity policy, I believe, and I can get Cortland to give us some more information on that, but it surprises me that you haven't filed a claim. Something you ought to know about me, I'm a veterinarian. If you bring your dog to me and I spay it, or say that I spay it, and then 5 years later your dog gets pregnant and has puppies, you're going to be a little upset. Hey, I paid you to spay my dog, and now it's having puppies. What are we going to do about this? 1, I'd be embarrassed. Number 2, I'd want to make it right with you. And number 3, it could come to a court case, and in such a case I have malpractice insurance. And so then my question to Cortland was, where's your malpractice insurance? You guys made a mistake. You ought to be insured against such mistakes such that you can reimburse me or take advantage of that indemnity policy. Number 5, let's go to the Weber County Motor Pool. Let's take 2 trucks, park them at my residence for personal use. At the end of 18 years, I'll give you 1 truck back, and you'll thank me for being good and kind. Or solution number 6, let's make it personal. Let's have each one of you write out a check for $1,000 out of your own personal account, because it's affecting me personally. Let's spread that personal feeling around and have you guys pony up. If you can't change the statute, fine, don't change the statute, but pony up. Let's make it square. And
I thought you said you only had 3 options. Now we're up to 8.
No, we were up to 6.
Oh.
And if I said 3, I apologize, but I don't know. Some of those may sound a little bit ludicrous, and I agree, but I think the first 2 make sense. Pay me back or prorate it. Cortland, do you have a minute that you can come and tell me about that indemnity policy?
When you're done with your presentation, I'll make the invitations, Mr. Shoup. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think you get the gist of what I'm after. And will I have a chance if for rebuttal if I sit down now? I don't know how this works. I'm new with this.
You can. We'll invite you back up if you have some other questions.
Perfect.
Mr. Erickson, do you want to go, or John, do you want to go? Does it matter?
Good morning, Commissioners. John Uleberry, Weber County Assessor.
Morning, John.
Thank you.
Mr. Uleberry?
Yes.
How long have you been the assessor here in Weber County?
I've been the elected assessor since 2011. I do want to tell everybody that I am personally embarrassed about the error that we have made on Mr. Shoup's property. That unfortunately, the errors do happen every once in a while. In this particular case, we have been sent Mr. Shoup valuation notices since 1998, where he's had the opportunity to file an appeal. I understand his point completely, that he just trusted us and said, well, you know, I'm assuming that you guys know what you're doing. This year, or excuse me, in 2017, Mr. Shoup filed an appeal, and we are the ones that notified him of the error. We found it, we notified him, we did the right thing. So there are a couple points to be made here. First, with the 20 years worth of valuation notices, with the way our current structure, we are currently structured in the office, we are more reliant on property owners to be cognizant of their property value, and two, their characteristics of their property. We've posted the characteristics of the property since the late 2000s on our website, which, you know, why would anybody bother to look at that, frankly? But we have had it available. Second thing, if we wanted to be more exact on every single property, it would require probably a budget the size of the sheriff's office budget. I sat down and calculated it out one day, and it would be around $20 to $22 million for us to do that. So I guess the question before us is, you know, what is the benefit to the public to be completely exact versus what is the cost to the taxpayer? And are our customers, our taxpayers, willing to pay that price? Okay, I'd be happy to field any questions that you may have.
I have a quick question. Mr. Shoup admonished us to change the code, which obviously if we think we're doing something inappropriately, we would like to do. Isn't it true though that we're not, this is not county statute that governs this, that it's state statute?
Is it state?
Maybe Cortland can answer the question when he comes.
My attorney says it's a state statute, not a county ordinance.
That always becomes the challenge for me in these cases. Is, you know, obviously, to use Mr. Shoup's one of his analogies, I want to be the good neighbor, right? I always want to do the right thing, what I think is right. But in certain cases, we are given in this body a rules of the game, for lack of a better term. We are political subdivisions of the state. We are not an island unto ourselves. We don't necessarily have the ability to do exactly what we would like to see done. And a lot of this policy, in fact, I think all of the policy in this particular area is state code policy. It's directed by the state and with state code and not county action. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Cortland, as far as what our recourse may be, because that's the one thing we cannot do is act outside of the statute here.
Really quickly, John, before you step away, could you just address the current assessment concern that Mr. Shoup brought up, that he's pulled up and their changes haven't been made on our website?
Oh, yes, thank you. We only make those changes to our website once, and that's after we close our rolls in May. And so we corrected all of the data in our CAMA system. So it's correct on our system, it just doesn't show correct as on our website.
Can you provide that to Mr. Shoup so he has a feeling that
Certainly.
That's been addressed? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Erickson, would you come and speak to this?
What you have in front of you is a situation that really involves a couple of different state laws. One of them, and the only reason you even have authority in a situation like this to grant any kind of a refund in this situation, is a statute that allows the county commission, if you determine that in your judgment the best human interests and the interests of the state and the county are served, you are able to provide an adjustment of the taxes that have been paid that goes beyond the basic statute that allows somebody to appeal their tax assessment. Maybe stepping back for just a second, under state law, if I wait until a year or 2 or 3 down the road to appeal my tax assessment, it's too late, because those are supposed to be taken care of each year at the Board of Equalization. There is this exception that allows counties where it's in the best human interest and the best interest of the state and the county to consider an adjustment or deferral of taxes. And so the question then becomes, how far do you go back? And the only statute of limitations that the courts have recognized, the only one that is any kind of a basis for use, has any kind of a basis for use in this situation, under state law, is the 4-year catch-all statute of limitations in the section that Joe referenced earlier, which is under state law, section 78B-2-307, and that is 4 years. If you were to go beyond that, there would be no legal basis for cutting it off at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, anything like that. There's no basis that I've found for cutting it off at 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 6 years. It's 4 years. And so that is a decision that you have to make. The decision that you've made in every case since I've been aware that this statute of limitations has been applied is 4 years. So if you were to choose a different amount, what would be the basis for that? Is there any kind of a difference? You would risk inconsistency if you didn't have some kind of a reason for going with a different amount. And again, what would be the basis for cutting it off at a certain period? There is none in state law that I'm aware of. That is the statute of limitations that the legislature has prescribed for every situation that doesn't have a more specific statute of limitations associated with it. Any questions about the statute of limitations?
Not specific to the statute. I know several years ago, we as a commission made the decision to adopt the 4 years. Are there other counties that are similar, or how do the other counties address this issue with the Board of Equalization and then applying that criteria to moving beyond the 1 year?
Mr. Olson and Mr. Ulibarri, I think, have more familiarity with what other counties do in that situation. I did some research in looking at what other county ordinances and codes and policies say on that. And I believe Salt Lake County has a policy that is kind of similar to ours. Others, I wasn't able, in the limited number of counties that I looked at, to find anything that really clearly answered that above and beyond just the 1 year normal Board of Equalization process, and maybe a few limited exceptions.
I guess the question I would have for you from legal, is there a concern if we move beyond the standard decision that we have really lined out there? Would that open up floodgates? Would that be issues? Are there legal considerations that we need to be aware of before we make the decision today, specific from legal?
The main legal considerations, I think, would be equal treatment of equal situations, and just the lack of a cutoff, if you will, the lack of a statute of limitations that applies other than the 4-year statute of limitations. And did you want me to address the insurance policy or indemnity policy question?
That would be informative for me.
I provided, or was one of the people involved in the communication of providing that, I believe, to Mr. Shoup. You got that copy of that policy, correct?
Yeah, I bought it from Drive and downloaded it.
Right, and so we provided that to him. That isn't something that I am aware has any bearing on this situation. If he has any kind of an argument as to why the Utah County's indemnity pool should provide any payment in this situation, that would be something we would have to evaluate and talk with USIP about. But to the best of my understanding, that doesn't apply in this situation.
Interesting.
And Dave Wilson may actually be better suited to speak to that. So if we got any formal request from you or anyone to look into that, we could, but I'm not aware of any application there.
It just seems to me like if commissioners, if we should be making arrangements to repay a debt or a duty or something, then we can figure that out, whether it's through our indemnity pool or something else. I guess the question here to me is, how do we address a difficult situation like this, one in which you talked about having things equal for equal cases or equal situations in the past, and it is a tough situation because commissions change, people change at this dais, they change, applicants are different. It's a real challenge. It's just a matter of figuring out what is an appropriate path going forward. It's just kind of a tough discussion to have. Because again, what we may want to do may be totally different than what we're constrained to do, or what precedent has been set, or what precedent we may set that would bind other commissions into the future. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think I'm getting my arms around this a little bit. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for commissioners? Mr. Shoup, would you like a chance at the mic again?
Sure. So I clipped an article out of the Standard Examiner. This is dated December 27th of 2017, where the Weber County Commissioners are expressing gratitude. Part of the paragraph there says, Weber County families are the most valuable asset of our community. When families can live and thrive in Weber, we become stronger and better. I guess, does over-assessing families in Weber County make us stronger and better? I'm still struggling to find the meaning in what I'm going through with this. If you haven't filed a claim, I would suggest that you do that. File a claim with that indemnity policy. Stranger things have happened. It may go rubber stamp through, and I get my money and I'm happy. But that's what I would tell you to do. File that claim. If that fails, then it's left to your conscience, I suppose, to refund my money the way I think that you should. Or if you side with the law, that whoever had made that law didn't make room for this exception. And I would think that in certain cases, exceptions should be made. And I believe that this is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you leave, can I just ask one question?
Go ahead.
What's your official request? Is it that we go back 18 years to the beginning of when the mistake was made? What would you?
Well, I've tried hard to come up with an exact dollar amount, but every time I submit a request to John Ulibarri, I get denied. And I've gone over his head to Roger, and he supports John in what he's saying as far as we don't have the information. We can't support any information. We don't have it, and we can't make it up. is the answer that I'm getting. And it's not our duty. We're not supposed to fabricate information. So how do I give you an exact dollar amount? I would love to be able to do that.
I understand. So we don't even know exactly what the damage may be, right? Because we don't have that information. It's not really there.
A fair assessment, if I take the $894.13, divide that by 4, I come up with a dollar amount of $223.53. I take that amount, multiply that by the 18 years that are in discrepancy, and I come up with a dollar amount of $4,023.59. That's not counting interest or penalties. I think that my time is valuable. If I don't value my own time, no one else will. So I submitted a GRAMA request to your Human Resources Department. The average wage for people in your county assessor's office is $23.43 an hour. If I calculated the number of hours that I've put into this, multiplied by that, that may be a fair penalty. And I'm willing to do that. But honestly, I need to get back to work. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shoup. Joe, would you come back up for a moment, please? Commissioner Ebert?
Could you explain to us maybe why Mr. Shoup's talking about the look back and what the issues are? Why are we having a hard time looking back?
We've had several CAMA systems over the years. We did, in fact, have the ability to get back to 2010 to identify what value would have been and what the corresponding tax would be. And we did, in fact, provide that to Mr. Shoup. We just do not have the software in place from 2009 back to 1998 that we can identify a value. We've had 3 or 4 programs over the last couple decades, and that's the time frame we're talking about, and we just cannot identify within the system. Some of these former years is into our previous CAMA system before the one that we're on, and we have to go in and change all the data in there so we can get back to 2010. We just do not have the ability to get to 2009 or previous.
So it wasn't too many years ago that I think we kind of adopted the 4 years. Prior to that, I don't think we went back 4 years, or I'm not sure what the process is.
Prior to that, and this was before I was a member of the Tax Review Committee, the legal option at that time was 1 year. And after reviewing the statute, what was available, Cortland was heavily involved in that. We felt that the 4 year, according to what legal has advised us, is a good number of years to go back. You asked about other counties. Cortland referenced Salt Lake County. I have spoken to several counties and just asked them what they do. And again, it's not all 29 counties, but the ones I've talked to, it is a Board of Equalization issue. In the state of Utah, the application deadline for the board is September 15th. The legislature a number of years ago said that if there's a factual error, among other things, you can go until March 31st of the following year. So many counties have said if they make whatever statutory deadline is available, they will look at that 1 year specifically. We have adopted through what you have agreed to through looking at the 78B judicial code, the ability to go back 4 years. It's not going to take care of situations like this.
I actually kind of felt like, speaking to Mr. Shoup's exception, that we were really looking for legal ability to make an exception beyond that 1 year when we came to that decision several years ago. And that we were applying that statute as liberally as we could to get to those 4 years, to give that exception, because again, the arguments that have been made are not new to this commission, and felt like we were really making that exception to go back 4 years. And so again, that's why I think it's important for us to continually have this discussion.
Commissioner Gibson, any questions for Mr. Olson? Thank you, Mr. Olson. Thank you.
I'll call for discussion on action item number 1 under item G. Hearing no discussion, is there a motion?
Let me review the action motion that we approve the tax review committee's recommendation to approve the refund of $894.13 to David T. Shoup for the parcel number 22-101-0001 due to a county error.
Let me just ask one more question. It can be yes or no answer. You don't have to come up. This was the recommendation of the Tax Review Commission as well? Yes, sir. That amount? Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. There's no more discussion. I'll call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 2, request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County appointing members to the Tourism Tax Advisory Board. Ms. Skeen.
Good afternoon. There are 3 members currently serving on the Tourism Tax Advisory Board whose term expire, and they are up for reappointment, and it has been recommended that they be reappointed to this board. There's Jennifer Graham, Marty Smith, and Sarah Tolliver. And they would serve a 4-year term expiring in December 31st, 2020.
Okay. Any discussion, commissioners? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 13, appointing the members as listed.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the members as listed. If there's no more discussion.
Commissioner
Resolution, go ahead.
Commissioner Ebert. Aye. Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
And Chair Harvey.
Aye.
Okay.
That resolution carries. Thank you. Item number 3, a request for approval of resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County appointing members to the Weber County Fair Board. Ms. Jan Wilson.
I'm a nay on this.
Well, then you're wrong.
No, but she likes my 4-H kids, so I'm a yes.
I do, and I really was glad I was here for that presentation. And even though she got very emotional, it was so nice that she has such passion for FFA. Those kids are awesome. Okay, this resolution is before you to appoint some of the Fair Board members for the next, there'll be 2 of them for 4-year terms and 1 for a 1-year term. Larry Hansen and Bruce Higley for 4-year terms, and Gene Potiker for a 1-year term. All 3 of these individuals have been involved with the county fair over the past 25 years that I've been involved in one aspect or another, and our board has recommended them to come to you for your approval.
I'll make a motion if you're ready.
I'm ready for a motion, unless there's more discussion.
There's not.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 14, appointing members to the Weber County Fair Board Advisory Committee, Mr. Hanson, Mr. Higley for 4 years, and Mr. Potiker for...
Ms. Potiker
for 1 year. I can't remember that.
Is she filling a vacancy?
Gene Potiker.
She's not.
Just for 1 year?
It's just a 1-year term. We do have some vacancies on our board, and so she's just gonna
Fill that.
okay,
great.
vacancy.
A motion to approve the names is read.
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion, I'll call for the vote for the resolution. Fatima?
Commissioner Ebert.
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson.
Aye.
And Chair Harvey.
Aye. Motion carries.
Thanks,
you, Ms.
Commissioners.
Wilson. Ms. Ebert, a request for approval of an operating and financial plan modification to law enforcement agreement by and between Weber County and the U.S. Forest Service.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I am here to ask for your approval for the operating and financial plan for the law enforcement services for the Forest Service for this upcoming year. There's no change in the amount that we've been receiving the last couple of years. This is for patrolling the roads and the campgrounds in the Forest Service area.
Any questions, commissioners? I have one. How long has it been this amount again? How long has it been that amount?
I think this is the 3rd year. It was $60,000. Then the federal government had a 10% reduction and went down to $54,000. They had another reduction and went down to $48,000. That was about over 3 years. And I think it's been $48,000 for the last 3 or 4 years.
I think you were meaning that it should be going the other direction.
Thank you for reading my mind and saying that out loud. That's exactly what I was thinking.
That's not usually what we see in the federal, with the federal government.
And what we've done to address the reduction is actually we've cut back on the scheduling of our Forest Service shifts to primarily weekends. The contract does call for emergencies also, but we try and tailor our schedule to fit the amount of dollars that they've allotted on the contract. So they're really not getting as much service as they used to because of the reduction.
Very good. I appreciate that. Is there any way for us to tell the federal government that we have an increase and we'd like to double?
You could try.
We could send a resolution.
Mr. Crockett, can we prepare a resolution to Mr. Trump doubling this agreement, please?
Call it an infrastructure asset.
Just a small little. Okay, great. If there's no other questions?
I'll make a motion that we approve the operating and financial plan modification for law enforcement between Weber County and the U.S. Forest Service.
I have a motion. I will second that motion. If there's no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Very good. Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank
Siebert,
you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilkinson. A request for approval of a real estate purchase and sale agreement by and between Weber County and Brighton Anderson. Did I say that correctly?
You did, yes.
Brighton Anderson for parcel 0242-0007.
And
Good.
don't take it personal that everyone is left.
I get to say good
You have
afternoon.
the most exciting part of the presentation.
Commissioners, we have been approached by Brighton Anderson about purchasing a piece of property that Weber County owns. We obtained this property at the 2014 tax sale. It is a lot located at 948 21st Street in Ogden City. We have had a letter written from a licensed real estate broker giving us an opinion of value. That value is $21,000 for this lot. And we are asking for your approval to sell this piece of property.
Great. Are there any questions for Mr. Wilkinson? None being recognized, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the sale agreement between Weber County and Brighton Anderson.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries, Mr. Wilkinson.
Great
Thank you.
job. Amazing.
Now is the time for public comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Line up there by the, thank you.
Line up behind Mr. Grover.
Hello.
Hello. I'm not used to this, so.
Okay, could
bear
you
with
state
me.
your name and
My name is Amber Gallegos. My family was evacuated from our home at 4839 South 600 West in Riverdale on November 28, 2017, due to a landslide in the backyard of my home. The landslide started out narrow and it is now very, very wide. There is water pouring out of my hillside on all sides. It's coming from the north, the south, and the middle. The geologist said that it is going to take all 3 homes at the top, including the street in front of my house, 600 West. One farm below has been destroyed and it threatens another, along with the Union Pacific Railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad's maintenance road, and a main sewer line that runs alongside of the railroad. It also threatens a main 42-inch stormwater drain and a 24-inch Weber Basin culinary line, which feeds a large community just west. I understand this was transferred to the county level when last week the Riverdale City Council voted to declare an emergency proclamation. Right now we're stuck in limbo, making a mortgage payment. The city has unhooked our gas, our water, and my electricity is due to be shut off this week. Riverdale has no plan to do anything other than monitor it. They've told us that. This is it. Riverdale drilled 3 wells in the street on 600 West for ground monitoring. I think it's ground monitoring, I'm not positive. And they took core samples, for which we have not received the results of those core samples yet. The drillers, I went down and spoke to the drillers and they told me that they hit water at 50 feet under the street. And when I asked them where they would expect to hit water, they said between 100 and 200 feet. At the bottom of my hillside, they did not expect to hit water at 50 feet. And they were slightly concerned about that. Riverdale had their water lines checked by a leak detecting agency right after the landslide. It was within days of it happening. It may have been like within one day. Washington Terrace, who neighbors us to the east and the south side, opted for visual leak detecting only. They didn't opt for the sonar or whatever they did. Washington Terrace reported to the Utah Division of Water Rights for 2015 a 20% water loss, and in 2016 a 28% water loss. 2015, that's 38 million gallons that went unaccounted for. That's culinary water. 2016, that's 75 million gallons of water that went unaccounted for. We don't have 2017's numbers yet. They haven't recorded those yet, so I don't have those. This is a huge water loss, and with the amount of water flowing out of the hillside, we really need someone to help us find where this water's coming from. The slide's 30 feet from my home. My husband and I both work in retail. The devastation to my home has been financially devastating. And I appreciate any of the ideas that you people have or comments to me. I'd be glad to research anything that you have. I've also been in contact with United States Senator Mike Lee's office. I've been talking to Ian Nemelka. I'm supposed to have a meeting sometime with him this week. But other than that, any comments or ideas that any of you have, I'd be more than appreciative.
Remind me, was your name Amber?
Mm-hmm.
Amber?
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. I have a poor memory. But let me just express to you my sympathy and sorrow for what's going on in your life right now. That's a terrible thing, isn't it? To have your home, maybe outside of family, one of the most important things in your
And
life.
my grandmother lives across the street, so she's going to be affected when it takes the road. She's 78 years old. So I grew up there, so it kind of like, it's my home neighborhood. My friends have all moved back there. We loved our neighborhood, loved it. And I think there's 17 families that moved away and moved back with their kids. My kids play with my friends' kids from when I was little. I mean, it's more of just, it's older homes. And, we thought about moving several times, but it's really the community we were just locked into, I love all my neighbors, so.
Any other comments? Commissioner Gibson, Commissioner Ebert?
I wouldn't mind if Sean could maybe kind of give us an idea where we're at on this. I know that Jared has been out there monitoring, and maybe that would help us speak a little bit.
Well, and Devron's done some things there too, so.
If there's any answer to what's been said as well about the emergency declaration and what effect that has on the county, that would be helpful. So, come on up.
Thank you, Commissioners. The involvement that the county has had thus far is sending our survey crews out to monitor how the landslide is moving. So on several occasions, we have had surveyors on the ground out there, and the landslide is obviously growing. Aside from that, our emergency management office has been to the site, has offered help. Thus far, I believe that help has been declined, and we are currently just having conversations with Riverdale City trying to help where we can, but I don't believe that Weber County is involved on a daily basis out there. As far as the declaration that Riverdale City made, I don't know anything about that. I had not heard that took place, and I don't know what the implications are for the county in that case.
I'll speak on behalf of myself, and maybe not for the entire commission, but I'm not aware, or we're not aware of any declaration by Riverdale City about this yet.
They did it, they said it at the last city council meeting. We've been going there.
Okay.
So, Mr. Crocker, would this be the resolution that they sent? They sent a resolution, and I sent it to the attorney's office, not really certain what else to do with it, just declaring.
And we weren't quite sure why it came to us. The statute that they were referring to, and I don't have it right up in front of me, was saying that the declaration needs to be filed within the clerk's office of the municipality or within the county, and I would think that would be wherever the hazard is. If it's located in unincorporated Weber County, it would go to the clerk's office here. If it's in a municipality, it would go there. So I'm not quite sure why it was sent to us, but we did receive a copy of it.
We could move that in our process as quickly as possible. We appreciate, Ms. Gallegos, you bringing a personal attention to that. In a different way, I'm sorry for your loss. I've spent 45 of my 55 years growing up on that hill, residing on that hill, just around the corner, one up a little more and just now around the corner. So I've seen different slides manifest themselves in my 55 years of age, but that's been a shocker. That's been really tough, and I've looked at the maps and seen the well sites and things, and it's because there's a lot of, you have a fantastic little community. I understand why you live there. It's a wonderful place.
But now the slide's moving to my house. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. When I told the mayor, I said, we talked at the city council meeting and we told him that, it's 30 feet from my garage, and he said, it's going to take your house. I mean, we're just gonna let it? I mean, I don't know how you stop that, though, of what my point is. I don't know how you stop that. I don't know how you can't stop water from taking its course, and you can't stop land from sliding its course. I've learned that. Okay. So but that's just a guy's answer. Right. Jared, did you come down here to speak on this? Mr. Anderson, will you come forward just for a second?
I love it when you say Mr. Anderson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jared Anderson, Weber County Engineer. As Sean mentioned, I was trying to catch this and get work done, and I appreciate Amber coming in and speaking. I know that I can't imagine going through that. I know as far as Lance Peterson, he's our Emergency Management Director. I know we were out there the day Sunday, happened on a Sunday, and we ran out there about as quick as we could to help. Had a geotechnical friend of mine that came up on a Sunday to evaluate the situation the day that it happened. We're very concerned. We're looking at all avenues. I literally talked to Lance Peterson 2 days ago as he was in, well, I guess it was Friday before the weekend. He was in Philadelphia for training, and we're still talking about what we can do from the county's perspective, if anything. I know we've been in conversations with NRCS with the landslide that happened up in Logan, where I believe 2 people passed away and some structures were damaged there. They were able to get some compensation through the federal government that way. We're looking through that. I think my understanding is that a declaration did have to happen at Riverdale City in order for that process to start. It is government. It takes time, but we want to do everything we can in the position we're in. Like Sean mentioned before, it's out of our jurisdiction per se, but at the same time, we're willing to do anything we can help. Can't imagine having to go through this, and we're definitely trying to pull the strings, if you want to say it that way, with the people that we know on what we can do to help. And I thought I also heard that they're possibly testing that water to see if it's chlorinated or not.
We had testing done on our own.
Okay.
And it came back unidentifiable. They said it's traveling too far.
So hard to tell if it's chlorinated or not. Yeah, and I did hear also that Riverdale City checked their water. Yes. So I think we're all trying to. The only thing I can think of saying is just hang in there, and we'll do everything we can to help from our side.
Where are you from?
Weber County Engineer.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great.
Do you have anything, Commissioner?
Take a couple minutes and maybe exchange information when we're done. Is there any other? Go ahead.
Really quickly, I just want to say, and Commissioner Gibson has a lot more experience in a lot of these federal things and processes, but my guess would be that the declaration starts the process not to shift responsibility or open up opportunity for the county to become involved, but more to have the declaration so we can access federal dollars. I have talked to, in fact, I went out when they were doing the full visual of it, and they were flying the little drone over, and I know that Mr. Anderson had called all of the commissioners and let him know what was going on, and each of us told him whatever we need to do, whatever equipment we need to send out, whatever surveys we need to do will be there, and we've told Riverdale City that. So there's not a passing of the baton from Riverdale City to the county then to do something. That has already been happening from day one, hand in hand. It's been to then hopefully be able to access some federal dollars. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I think Riverdale had tried that or something, but it hadn't reached 25 homes, so, or something like that. But, okay.
Right, are there any other public comments?
Let me just add to that, if you will check your email, Mr. Crockett just sent a copy of the resolution to each of your emails, I think. At least it came to mine, I'm assuming it came to the others. And it's very short. I think Commissioner Ebert said it correctly, that I believe that this sends it to Weber County as a, because they have to file it with somewhere to show that it's been sent somewhere, but I think what this will do is allow the federal government to recognize this as an emergency under that declaration, and it'll open up some opportunities, I think, for Riverdale to be able to access funding in that case. That's usually how these emergency declarations work. Not sure why they even send it to the county, since we're not involved in that type of thing, but I agree that I think it's important that we continue to offer resource and help wherever we can, and I'm confident that we'll do that. So thank you.
Very good, thank you. That's fantastic. I appreciate us working so quickly. There are areas that we do very good, and we're very efficient, and I appreciate how quickly that's moved already. So there you go, Amber. Thank you. If there's no other public comments, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
And it's moved and seconded. All in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you. Okay, sitting adjourned.